This is Gemara Menachos Daf Pei Zayin, as we'll be wrapping up the 9th parak of Menachos today. B'siyata Dishmaya. We pick it up from the Mishnah on the bottom of Pei Vavam Beis, and after going through the Karban Mincha extensively, all the different flowers necessary and possible, the different oils, different grades of oil, the Mishnah continues, and the Mishnah now goes into the Yayin, the Nesachim, the libations that accompany. Says the Mishnah, "May ayin ayamevian as a yayin." From where they bring the wine? Kiduchem, Kiduchem atulin alpha liyayin. The wines produced in places called Kiduchem and atulin are the alpha, the greatest of the yayin. So the best would be from there. Shnialem secondary is Shnialem Beis Rima or Beis Lavan Bahir. Second to them are the wines of Beis Rima, Beis Lavan, Ukfar Signa Babika, Kfar Signa in the valley. Kol ha'aratzais hayakasheirais. All lands are kosher, elamikan hayameviin. But from there, they would bring. Continues the Mishnah, Ein meviin, they would not bring, Lomi Beis Azvalim, Lomi Beis Ashlachim. They would not bring wine from fertilized fields, from irrigated fields, not from vines which seeds were grown. And if they brought kosher. And they would not bring listerin wine, kosher. They would not bring old wine. They would not bring sweet wine, not smoked wine, not cooked wine. And those three b'diavad are even going to be possible. They would not bring from vines that were suspended, hanging on trellises, but rather from just regular ones, from vineyards, avudim that were cultivated. 3 lines from the bottom. They did not place it in large casks, small barrels, which again, different forms of chashivas of the yayin. Ein memale as a chavis ad pia, cannot fill up the barrel until its mouth, so that the aroma will spread when the barrel is open. And again, these different milas in yayin. Ein mevia mi pia, one does not bring wine from the barrel of the mouth. Mibnei, why not? Akamachim, because of the mold. There's these particles of mold and dust-like particles, white flour, that float to the top of the barrel. So you never wanted to take the wine that's mamish sitting at the top. Continues the Mishnah at the top of Yizayin Amud Aleph, v'loi mishuleo b'nei hashmarim, nor when you bring the wine from the bottom because of the sediment. Elamevi mishalisho meimsia. Rather, you would bring it from the middle third. Elamevia mishlisha from the middle third. May emsa'a from that third's middle. So you want the middle of the middle. Kitzad. How would you make sure that the wine that you're bringing is kosher? Hubaydek, or is the best, I should say. Kitzad hubaydek. How do you check a gizber yeshev? The gizber sits v'akana biyadai with a reed in his hand. Zarak hagir. When the froth comes out, hakish v'akana, he would tap it with the reed. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Aimer, Shish Bay Kimachim. Well, wine that has mold is not kosher. Pasal Shenamar Timimim Yolachem and Chasam Timimim Yolachem Vinis Keihem. So fascinating, different ideas with wine. Where it would come from, what part of the barrel, how much the barrel would be filled up, and again, continuously looking for the best of the best, how they would test it, etc. Says the Gemara, Ein Meviim, we said in the Mishnah, Loi Matok, not sweet, V'lam V'shalom, not cooked, V'lam Musha, not smoked. But V'im Hevi, Pasal. I Voktani Rishon, Meviim, as a Listeron, V'im Hevi, kosher. So why by Listeron, B'diavad, is it kosher? Why by cooked, smoked, and molded, B'diavad, is it Pasal? And the kosher really is predicated that this Listeron wine is sweet wine. So the kasha is sweet wine b'diavad, kosher b'diavad apostle. Amar Avina, Kroich v'tani, combine the two, and teach it as one that what? It's going to be basal bidi of had. Rav Ashi Amar, Choya de Shimsha loy ma'is. Sweetness of the sun is not repulsive, and therefore this Listerin wine, Lamaisa b'diavad, is going to be kosher. Choya de peri ma'is. Sweetness of the fruit is repulsive, and therefore it's going to be pasul. So different levels of sweetness, we could call it, different ways it gets sweet, etc. Continues the Gemara, according to the next part of the Mishnah. What is the story with Yayin Yashan, with old wine? Says the Gemara, Amar Chizkiya, my time of the Rabbi. What's the reason the Rabbi says Yayin Yashan is no good? And the Pashup Shan Yayin Yashan is wine from the previous year. My time of the Rabbi, Amar Kra, quotes a pasuk. Lekeves yayin, for a lamb, wine. Ma keves ben shenasai. Just like the lamb has to be in its first year. Af yayin ben shenasai. Correct Gemara, 1 second. If that is where Rabbi learned it out from, then we should have other dinim of the keves. Ima keves ben shnei shanim pasal. Af yayin ben shnei shanim, it should be pasal. So in shnei shanim should be that which is possible. V'chitim achanami. V'atani em b'shein shalom lo yavi v'mevi kasher. Man sham sam lo yavi. Who's one that says you shouldn't bring a lechatchila? Excuse me, that's going to be Rebbe. As a chum did not have a problem. But what did it say? V'kamer mevi kasher. Elamai Rava. I know time of the Rebbe. D'chsev al teira yayin ki yis adaim. The is Adam. Rebbe's reason is do not look upon the wine when it is red. And from there, pasuk in Mishlei, here we see that the best wine is when it's a mamish in the beautiful redness, which lasts for the first year, says Rashi. After that first year, the color of the wine begins to subside, it begins to fade, and therefore we want it within the first year. Says the Gemara in Mevi and Laminad. We don't bring wine from vines suspended on trellises, said the Mishnah, but rather from regiliyos. Tana. Karamim ha'avudim pamayim bashana. What does it mean? The cultivated vineyards, those are the ones that are dug twice a year. Rav Yosef Havalei Karna de Pardisa. Rav Yosef had a corner plot in a pardis in a vineyard, the Rabbi Beit Fei Rivka, in which he dug an extra digging. Ve'avad chamra de dari mayo al chad train, and it made such incredible wine that 2 parts of water for every 2 parts water for every 1 part used to dilute regular wine. The extra digging made it so potent that it was diluted with 6 parts of wine for every 1 part of water. The Gemara is just proving the way to create this incredible quality wine. Said the Mishnah, don't gather all together in a large husk. We want the wine in small barrels. Tana, we learned in our brayso, chaviyos, kadiyos, udayos, ubeniyos. Small barrels are equivalent to medium-sized Ludian jugs. We do not place them 2 by 2. Ella achas 1 by 1. Said the Mishnah, he said, he has the reed, and as the froth goes up, he taps it with the reed, he measures it. Tana. We learned in a brayso. Tana. Zarak hagir shel shemarim. Zarak, when the shemarim comes up, when the froth comes up, gizbar rekish bakana. The gizbar taps with the reed to show where the spout should be shut. So what's going on over here is he's making sure the precise amount of froth comes out. V'lei malei meimar. Says the Gemara, what's he doing with this whole stick, massive? Just tell him, shut the spigot. What's going on over there? Says the Gemara, we have a raya to Rav Yechanan, Rav Yechanan, Shem Shadibar Yafal B'Samim Kach Dibur Ra Leyayin. Just like Dibur is good for B'Samim, so to Dibur is Ra for Yayin. So they didn't want to speak, whatever this means, that we're learning that there's nuances within wine that are absolutely fascinating, is they didn't want to speak when the wine comes out, and that's what they would tap it with a stick in order to ensure the highest quality wine. Says the Gemara, quoting the next part of the Mishnah, Rav Yesi Rav Yehuda Imer. Says Rav Yesi Rav Yehuda that the Mishnah said if you have moldy wine, it's no good. Boy, Rav Yechon has a shaylo. Hekdeshai. If someone is a makdish, this moldy wine for nisachim. Ma'u she yilke Allah misham balmam. What is the halacha? Whether you should receive a malchus because it's like a balmam. Ma'am is similar to the other gemaras that we had by the shemen. How do we equate something not nice? Is it a zoivi a mum or not? Kiva the pasuk balmam dami otamein balmam elbehema. And as we had each and every time, teiku. Tana Rabbanan continues the Gemara. We continue and we conclude the parak showing how do you bring karbanos in the greatest fashion. That the elim from Moav, the rams were from Moav. Kvasim, the lambs were from Chevron. Agolim, the calves were Misharon. Goizlois, the birds Mehar HaMelech. Rav Yudaimer maybe in Kvasim Shegavoyan, Shegavan Kerachvan. They bring lambs whose height is like their width. Amai Rava Bar Shila Maitem David Chsev Yira Mikanecha Bayoim Hao Yira Mikanecha. It should graze on that day. Your livestock on that day. Bayamahu Kar Nechav, a broad lamb, showing us how gishmak these animals were. We conclude, Ksev al Chaymesechi Yushalayim Ifkarati, Shoimrim, Kol Hayoim, V'chol HaLayla Tameh Lo Yecheshu. Parts of this pasuk are famous. Hamaskirim Hashem, Al Demi Lochem. Zok Tehilige pasuk. Where's this pasuk? So pasuk in Yeshaya, it's a little bit after the previous psukim that we just quoted. That Al Chaymesayach, on your walls of Yushalayim Ifkarati, Shoimrim, there are guard posts. All day and all night, they will never be quiet. Hamaskirim es Hashem, you'll remind Hashem. Al demilachem, do not be silent. My Omri, what does this mean? What are these Shemrim saying? You're going to rise and show. Rachmanis the Sion, Nachbar Yitzchak, Arboine Yerushalayim Hashem, the building of Yerushalayim Hashem, Meikar Ma'avi Omri. And initially, before the Chorban, now it's after the Chorban. That's what is being said. But after the Chorban, what is being said? Amar Rava bar Rav Shila, Kivach Hashem Sion, Eva L'Moishavla. Hashem has chose Sion for its desired in its dwelling. Hadjan Allah Kol HaKarbanos Sibor. Psiyat Shemaya, learning about Karbanos should be this chos that we should be able to bring the Karbanos from here of Yamenu. And we continue with more about the Menachos, of course. We are in Mesachos Menachos. And now we go involved in measuring the flour, the different kelim that were used. Says the Mishnah, Shtei midos shel yavesh hayu b'mikdash. There were two midos for yavesh, two dry measurements in the Beis Hamikdash. Isarin achatz isarin. Rameir Aimer. Isarin v'chatz isarin. 3 isarin and another isarin, which we're going to see what that means, and a chatz isarin. Says the Mishnah, isarin ma'aya. What is the isarin for? Isarin ma'aya mishamesh. What purpose did it serve? Shebayaya ma'yireid l'chol my date. Excuse me. They would measure l'chol hamenachos, all the menachos. They would not measure, not with 3 isarin for the mincha that went with the par. Not with the 2 isarin for the aisle. They would measure it in increments of isarin, in the increments of isarin measurements. Continues the Mishnah. Chatzi isarin. Maya mishamish. And that's how they would measure the chavite kohen gadol, half in the morning and half by nacht. Says the Gemara, Tani, we learned in a bray, so you're a mayor, Matam, Isar, and like Eve, Isar, and like Eve, Zechad. Says the Torah, we learned Shtei Yisrael, say, we made 2 Yisrael, Echad, Gadosh, Echad, Machok. One was heaping and one was leveled, meaning it was the same Yisrael, but it was used in two different ways. Says the Gemara, the heaped one we measure all the carbon menachos. Machik shebai, as we turn over to Peizayin Amid Beis, the level one, the rabbis chatzisar, v'rameir chatzisar minali. Where does Amir know this from? Afkalei mevi isaroin, the extra vav rabbanan vav loi darshi. V'rameir havi yisar nechal kavish echad. My of delay, but Rameir says there were two types of isaroinais. What does he do with the fact that Torah says isaroin echad? What does he do with the fact that Torah says that there was only one? Says the Gemara, that's where we learned out that you shouldn't measure it in the larger measurements, but rather it should be measured each and every one in isaroin increments. They learn it from the fact that there's a dot on the word isaroin in the Torah. The Tanya, Rav Yesi, la menachos bevav shebe'emsa isaroin shel isaroin v'shel yom tov v'rishon shel chag shel yom tov lo b'shel kimol par v'lo b'shel shnayim la'ayil Rameir nekudai loy darish. So it boils down the fascinating drashos. Rameir darsh is extra vav, whereas the Chum darsh an extra dot. And we continue. Says the Gemara at the end of the Mishnah. Chatzi isaroin mayim mishami shabayim moidi lechavite kohen gadol. They would measure chatzi laboiker v'chatzi lebein harabayim. 12 lines down. The first line is moidid. Says the Gemara, moidid. You're measuring half isaroin. Veramini chavite kohen gadol layabar nechatzoin. The chavite kohen gadol was now brought in halves. Maybe isaroin shalim. They bring a full one, and then they would divide it. The Mishnah, it sounds like that they split it in half prior. Rav Sheishes, my moide, says Rav Sheishes. What does it mean that you measure? Nami dikatani mechalik. You divided. Mishnah means the kohen gadol. After you measure the complete isaron of flour, you divide it into two parts. Meaning, the Mishnah means what the Brisa says. The Mashmayis was that they split it earlier, says the Gemara. That is not true. So, this Chatzi Yisarain, according to Rameir, was it Gadosh or was it Machik? Now, why we're asking the Rameir, hold on tight. Frag the Gemara, the Rabbanon, Yisarain Gufay Kavi Baile. Frag the Gemara, according to the Rabbanon, that's what the Yisarain itself. Kadeshaya, Kamivayalu, Kadeshaya, Aymachikaya. We can ask, according to the Rabbanan itself, the Isarin, the full Isarin, what was it? Was it Kadesh or was it Machik? Was it able to be heaped? Did it have a lip to allow it to be heaped? Or did it have to be leveled? So Amar Lei, so if Chisda responds, Amar Chama, Midra Meir Nishma, Amar Lei Midra Meir Nishma. We can learn out from Midir Rabbi Meir Nishma Rameir. For a Meir in one case, learn to Rameir in another case. Midir Rameir Nishma Rabbanan. A little bit hard to see all the words Rameir. From Rameir, we're going to learn to Rameir, and from Rameir, we're going to learn to Rabbanan. Midamar Rameir Yisarin Machok Chatzi Yisarin Nami Machok. From the fact that Rameir said the Yisarin is Machok, the Chatzi Yisarin is Nami Machok. But Rameir excuse me, I'm getting caught up over here. One more time. When they're married, Saran Machok, Chatzi Saran Nami Machok. When they're Meir Machok, the Saran was Machok, the Rabbanan Nami Machok. So we learn one to the other. So Bayi Minei Rami Marachamer Rav Chisda, Chavite Kain Gadol, B'ma Mechalkin. Chavite Kain Gadol, with what you divided lechalois into loaves. Biyad, Ibikli. Do you have to do it by hand? Or do you need dafka kli to split it when you're coming to the chalois of the lechem hapanim? Well, not lechem hapanim, excuse me. The chavite kohen gadol, where says Rashi, similar to the lechem hapanim, there were 12 of them. Chavite kohen gadol were baked into 12 loaves, and 6 of them bar bakir, 6 of them bein rabbi. So says the Gemara, do we need a kli to split them? Meaning, do we need it to be precise, each and every one, or not? Says Gemara, Pshita de biyad. Tibikli, because if you needed a kli, tortani achnis, then he's bringing a scale for this purpose. And the Gemara finds that to be bizarre. Says Gemara, why? Yachlis. Yeah, bring a scale. Kivan debiklala, since the scale is written in the Torah next to klala, lav irach ara. We can't fathom bringing a scale into the Beis Hamikdash. A fascinating Gemara. One last shayla boy minei. Rabbi Bar Chama merav Chista. Rabbi Chava frags from Chista. Shulchan. Ma'ushe ikadish kamatzim begoyde shaloi. What is the halacha? Is the kaimetz of Levina for the shulchan? Does it get kedusha begoyde shaloi in the airspace? Frak the Gemara. The kayin puts two kaimetz of Levina next to the shulchan. Next to lechem upon him. If he doesn't put it into the actual bazichim, the spoons, is the shulchan itself makdish them or not? Mid mekadish lechem, do we see that the shulchan makes lechem upon him kadosh? Kamatzim nami kadosh will do the same thing makdish. Or dem with the chazil lemikdash. To lo chazilei lo mekadish. Maybe on that which is chazil, since it's not in the spoons, it's not chazilei. Amrei in mekadish. Eini frakti Gemara of Amar Rav Yechanan the Divrei Oimer Tivchayim Umechsa. According to the opinion that says that they would bend the lechem upon him 2.5 tfachim, koifel they would bend it. Nimsa comes out Shulchan Mekadesh Chamisa Asar Tevach Limayla. Shulchan has kedusha for 15 tfachim up. The Divrei Oimer Tivchayim koifel. According to the opinion that says they would bend the sides 2 tfachim. Nimsa, Shulchan Mekadesh Yovi Tvachim Lamala. So, Frank to Gemara, what do we see? We see for this discussion the size of Lechem upon him and how far the Kedusha elevates upward, that we're assuming the airspace is Mekadesh. Amar Le, Einoi Mekadesh. Says Rabbi Chama, Einoi Mekadesh Likarev, Am Mekadesh Lefasal. Doesn't mean it has Kedusha. To give it Kedusha has to be brought as a carbon, which would thereby tell us by us the Kamitza, even before being put in the spoons as kedusha. No, it means mekadesh li pasel. It means as kedusha as much that it will then be able to become pasel, a middle level of kedusha that we're discussing. Pick it up from the Mishnah, the Siyata, the Shemai.